Well, good evening and welcome to Door on Tour. We're here for a Nottingham Forest versus Newcastle United preview show. We're going to be talking all about the big game coming on Friday. Now, good evening, as I say, it's the 15th of March. We've got another 2 days until the 8 o'clock kickoff at the City Ground, Nottingham Forest versus Newcastle United. And I'm delighted to say that I am joined by the amazing Pete Davey, who's in the chat right now. I can see him smiling, ready to jump on. So do let us know how you're feeling in the comments ahead of Friday. And of course, don't forget to like and subscribe as well. And continue to keep supporting the hard work that Dore does. He's on shift tonight, so sending him all my best. But yeah, he's on shift tonight, so I'm covering for him. So, but Patrick, we will talk about this a little bit later on. But first, we're going to talk to Pete. Welcome to the show, my friend. How are you doing?
Good evening. Thank you for having me on. Again, I've been on your channel before. Had a good chat, so thank you for having me back. Appreciate it.
No worries. It's great to have you, and a massive game coming up on Friday. But before we talk a little bit about that game, can you just tell some of our audience a little bit about what you do and your time being a Newcastle fan?
Yeah, well, I mean, we talk all things Newcastle United on Loaded Mag and UFC. You can see it on my kind of tag at the front there on YouTube, and we've been doing it for a couple of years now. I've been 30 years a Newcastle United fan. Followed them near and far, Europe and back. Seen some horrible times, some dark times, as you guys are Forest fans have seen as well. But we're in a position now where we can kind of dream again and be really ambitious of where we want to take this club moving forward with our new owners. So we've been through the mud over the years, but hopefully we'll see some brighter days coming very soon. But it is a similar situation to Forest, and I have to say, first season back in the Premier League, just off the bat, I think you guys have put some impressive performances in. So you guys need to take that confidence in that into the back end of the season.
Well, hopefully we can, because this is the tough bit. But I always look at Newcastle's revival, if you like, as kind of an inspiration for that. And I was actually looking on your Twitter and the post when Newcastle stayed up. It really filled me. It made me smile because I think Newcastle's a really difficult club to dislike, I find, because I know that people will probably be coming on stream thinking, okay, they're going to get into each other ahead of Friday. But I really find it difficult to kind of dislike or even rival Newcastle because of the story that they've had and the things that they've been through. Obviously, the takeover controversy, whether it would happen or not. At one point, it was Newcastle became almost a laughing stock for some people because it didn't happen. And then when it did, it just completely changed the club's fortunes. But obviously, we're going to be talking about current form. And this season, you've started off really strongly. One of the best defensive teams in the Premier League. And Eddie Howe has put together quite a cohesive unit of players. And obviously, he's made some very smart signings. But recently, talking now just recent form, it started to dip ever so slightly. Perhaps just a week or so before the cup final. So what do you think has kind of led to that? Because I maybe alluded to when I was talking to friends about this, that maybe it was a squad depth issue. There's been a lot of the same players playing week in, week out, just being a bit tired, really. Is that the issue, or what do you think the issue might be?
I think there's accumulation of issues, but I think you're absolutely right that the squad depth is one of them. We don't have a massive squad to choose from. Certainly not with all due respect to our players, certainly not the players that you would want to be able to choose from for a team that have been fighting at the top end of the Premier League this season. So again, on Sunday, we had players like, and he's been a fantastic servant for the club. I can't disrespect him, he's been great. But like Matt Ritchie, for example, coming on and trying to get see us through a win that's going to take us back into the top 5 of the Premier League. I don't think any Newcastle fan would have thought that. Paul Dummett's not kicked a ball for us all season, but he's part of the squad. You've got players like that, Jamal Lewis, who can't get in the team, or sometimes even in the squad for match days. It's, we've got players like that, if we want to be fighting at the top end of the table, we probably need to move on. So therefore, Eddie Howe doesn't always use those players. And so we do have that squad of maybe 14 players that we use all the time, but you've got to keep them fit. And some of them haven't been fit over the course of the season. So that's one thing. The other thing is, and I think the biggest reason for our little dip in form is the fact that we had the cup final hanging over our head. The first cup final in 24 years. We were so excited as a fan base about that final. The club was so excited about that. We're up against a Man United team that ended up going into the cup final in decent form, but actually they weren't a team that we feared. If we'd have gone against a Man City or a Liverpool, we'd have maybe had some fear because they're serial winners. They've won trophies, certainly Man City. But we felt they were a team that we could really compete against and go up against. And we didn't quite perform in the final, but I think now we've got that final out of the way, we're kind of, back focused on the main project, which is the league, and making sure we finish as strong as possible. And I genuinely believe this weekend against Wolves was the first game of that. I certainly looked at our performance against Wolves and the way we played. It wasn't too dissimilar from some of the other games. We have played Man City, Man United in the cup final, and then Liverpool the week before that. So there are three tough teams that we played against in the run up to this game against Wolves. But even in those games that we lost, we still were competitive. We created a lot of chances still. We just couldn't put the ball in the net. But what we did on Sunday was similar to what we'd done before the World Cup, is that we dominated a team with chances created, with the high press, but we put chances away. And that was the key for me. And I think that will give us confidence going into the back end of the season.
And it's going to be a massive, and this is why I kind of discussed this fixture as being a huge fixture, because I know that probably from an outside looking in Premier League fan perspective, they might just think, well, it's just Newcastle Forest, it doesn't really matter. But it's decisive because you guys want to try and get back into the top four and solidify your place. Although I would argue, again, from outside looking in perspective, that a lot of Newcastle fans would have taken top 10. Looking back last season, but top four, if that's where you can go to, you've got to try and work for it, as the players are and the management staff are. But on the latter, Forest are trying to stay in the Premier League, and there's 2 points separating them from the relegation zone now. So really, I've said, on behalf of a lot of people, that maybe a point would be the absolute minimum we can get, which sounds almost egotistical because Newcastle are an incredibly tough side to play against, home or away, and we know how difficult they made it for us. That first game of the season at St James's Park, and I was there. It was brilliant atmosphere-wise. Shame about the result. But, this is a big 3 points needed by either side, really. It's a shame that we can't have 3 points each and just go on with that. As I say, I find it really difficult to dislike Newcastle. My granddad was a Geordie, and he has loads of Alan Shearer shirts in his house and everything. So always, I've always been able to watch them, particularly when it was like Demba Cisse up front, and Demba Ba and Papa Cisse. That was, I like that. Maybe not Alan Pardew, but I don't know, he was all right. But they've been through some tough times, Steve Bruce, etc. But let's have a look at chat. I bet you'll be glad to say that's gone.
You're not wrong. Any talk of Steve Bruce literally sent shivers down all Newcastle United fans' spines because of what he left us with. That's for sure. But it's just look at the chat. It's good to see one or two Newcastle fans from Loaded Mag NFC coming and joining the chat. Obviously, Lisa, always one of our mods, super supporter of the channel. It's great to see one or two in there.
It's amazing. It's good to see all of you in chat, and do let us know how you're feeling ahead of the game on Friday. As I say, maybe give us score predictions if you can. I know it's pretty early on, and anything could happen in the next couple of days. So let's have a look. Evening, Kel. Hope you're doing well. Eve, good to hear from you. D Chapo, good to hear from you also. We'll talk a little bit about squad news later and team lineup. So I'll get your predicted lineup for Newcastle as well, if that's all good with you.
Yeah.
Mark, we've got evening, Jamie, evening, Pete. Good to see you all. And as Dore says, drop us a like. It'd really help out. And yeah, it'll be absolutely brilliant. And Tom Dixon as well, Newcastle fan here. Good evening, my friend. Welcome to the channel. And you don't worry, you can be kind to Forest tonight, please. So this is friendly chat. Hoping Johnson is fit for Friday. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I don't think he is. I know people are saying he's going to be out 6 to 8 weeks. It's not
Jay,
true.
I want to ask you about that because I've read some bits today. I'm not sure. Did Cooper have his press conference? Someone said that he said he's not likely to play or he's not going to play on Friday. What was the situation at Tottenham? Do we know what the injury was? Like for me, if he's not playing, and I said it on our show earlier on tonight, like that's a massive plus for Newcastle because I massively rate him. I said it to Ben before. I really, really rate him as a player. We were linked with him, over a year ago in the January 2022, and we looked at him quite closely as a channel. He is a talented boy, very, very talented. So that's a big plus for us. But what's the situation?
So he's currently out with a groin strain. From what I understand, it's nothing incredibly serious because we've had other players with groin strain that have been out for much longer. So Taiwo Awoniyi, one of our other forwards, who is the second top goal scorer, he's good. He's fast, he's physical, and he was just getting into his form and into the English game properly. But then he got an injury, as I say, and that was quite a serious groin strain. So he's been out for a month and a half. Whereas I think Brennan's probably going to be back maybe next week or the week after. I don't think it's as serious, but in regard to him playing tomorrow, highly doubt it. But there's still other players that Forest have got ready and next man up, as they say. But of course, Brennan Johnson is probably one of the most dangerous young players in the Premier League right now. And actually, you've been relinked with him today. So that's really interesting. Is he someone that you would have in a Newcastle shirt?
Yeah, I mean, look, the one thing I'll say with Newcastle at the moment is that unlike previous years, Eddie Howe has got a huge pool of players that we're looking at in a number of different positions. And the one thing I will say is that I think Brennan Johnson will be in that list. Now, I think it would be the determining factor will be how much he will cost. I don't know how much Forest will be willing to part in terms of price for Newcastle to potentially sign him. But would I take him? Definitely, because I think he would really add to the way in which we play. I actually think he's very much an Eddie Howe type player. Likes that, for one, he's quick. Eddie Howe likes pace in his attacking areas. He looks good on the press. He's got a very good technique. He can cross a ball, but I look at that goal that he scored against Leeds at your place. The technique on that finish was just unbelievable. Like for such a young lad to finish the way he does and just make it look so effortless. He's a guy that will I'm sure from a Forest perspective, you would want it to be with you. But if he does move on to any club, I think he will go right to the top. I really do.
Well, I hope he doesn't move because, as you say, he's probably one of the best talents that the Forest Academy. And by the way, got to give credit to Forest Academy. We'll talk a bit more about Newcastle in a minute now because I'm going too Foresty now. But Forest Academy has produced some brilliant talents over the years. And I think Brennan is probably one of the brightest. And it's just amazing how well he's done. But Pete, all I'm going to say to you is now, hands off. You're not having him.
I know. Okay. I've just seen it in the chat. I've just seen it in the chat saying you're not having him.
You're not having him.
I'm just saying if he was on offer, I would love to have him. But to be fair, that's to Forest's credit. And like you just said, Jay, like he is a top player. You produced him. He's come through. I loved last season in the build up to you guys getting promoted, like with his family in the crowd when he was on Sky and them enjoying the moments that you guys had as a club. Because I do like Forest. I really do.
I appreciate that.
Spencer Weir-Daly, I think he came through your academy. You probably won't know because he was back in the 90s. I know him really well, and we used to play together because I'm actually from Leicester, born and raised in Leicester, which is just around the corner. I can't think of anything more sweeter than Leicester going down and Forest staying up. I'm not a Leicester fan, by the way. I dislike Leicester just as much as I do Sunderland, which tells you everything you need to know. So I've got a little bit of affiliation with Forest. I do like them as a club, and I'd love for you guys to stay up. But yeah, so I've watched kind of like the back end of last season, and I do, fair play to you guys for getting promoted, and you're in with a fighting chance. You're in with a fighting chance.
There's probably 8 teams that are all in contention to fall into that bottom 3. So no, we appreciate that.
Which is good though, right? That's good. You want as many teams in it as possible because it gives you a better chance of getting out of it. So
it's good in regard to that, but it's more the nerves, the pressure that it puts me under. I think football has actually controlled all of my emotions in this last year and a half. It's been such a roller coaster because we've had such great times, and now it's like, a lot of people are kind of starting to not jump ship, but a lot of people are kind of going, well, forget it, but it's all part of football. This is what it's all about. And you've just got to get behind your team because that atmosphere does make a difference. And that's why our home form is so good, which we're now going to talk about. We're unbeaten at the City Ground since September. Yeah. Teams like Liverpool have come here. Man City have come here. Chelsea have come here. Obviously, this is all in the league, though. Obviously, Man United beat us in the cup. But, a lot of the best sides in the Premier League have gone to Forest already at the City Ground and not beaten them. So, how are you anticipating that kind of away atmosphere in your regard affecting the Newcastle players on Friday?
I don't think beforehand, before this ownership and before Eddie Howe, I would have said, yeah, we'd have been intimidated by it, would have affected us. It did, actually, when we had Rondon at the club. You guys knocked us out of the cup, and I was there. And the atmosphere was electric that night, and that definitely made the difference. But I just think this Eddie Howe team's built differently. I think you've had some really good teams go to your place and actually not pull up any trees, and that's credit to you guys. But the one thing I've got to hold on to as a Newcastle fan is the fact that we've got the best defensive record in the Premier League. And we are very, very well drilled as a defensive unit. Now, Pope aside, and he's made a couple of blunders recently, those aside, we have been pretty flawless in terms of the way in which we've defended. And I've got to take some confidence as a Newcastle fan into the game that, with some of your bigger players potentially being out, certainly in attacking areas, that it's a plus for us. And that if we've got Botman and Shaw as a centre-back pairing who have been outstanding this season, back fit and firing and raring to go, Trippier, who looked back in form again against Wolves, whether it's Dan Burn or Target playing left-back, like if we've got those players in our team, that's got to fill me with confidence that we're not going to concede a goal or concede, maybe one. Now it's a case of, can we score 1 or 2 in the game? And that's been our biggest issue recently. We've answered that question on Sunday. If Isak plays, we've got a great chance of scoring goals. And I don't know whether I'm right in saying this. You might want to correct me, Jane. That the one thing I've noticed about Forest is that they do give a lot of chances away in games, whether it's home
100%, yeah.
And I watched the game against Leeds. I watched the Man City game. I've watched a number of games that you've played in. And whether you've won or lost, you've always given chances away. And for me, I just think if that happens again on Friday, I do think we've got players that can punish you, as long as we keep it tight at the back. So there's a couple of variations there, but I do think our defensive record will see us potentially through, because it's been so good this year.
Absolutely, and I was actually going to talk about Alexander Isak actually, because he's someone that I don't know. I don't really have a look too much at Newcastle games. Obviously, when I can, I will. But he's one of those players that has he really featured a lot? Because I'm pretty sure that Callum Wilson's been starting a little bit more than him, which shocked me because I thought that Isak was as you say, a player that will go and finish those chances. And if Forest give a player like him, and also Callum Wilson, respect to him as well, good striker, but more so Isak, I would say. He's going to go and finish, and his goal scoring record has been pretty good game per game.
Yeah, Isak is a top striker. He really, really is. He he came in when Callum Wilson was injured earlier on in the season. When we signed him, he had a fantastic debut away at Anfield. He scored, should have had 2 goals. One was ruled out for offside, and I have no idea why. But and then he scored at Bournemouth the week after. But then he got injured on international duty for Sweden, and he was out for the best part of 4 months. He missed the back end of the build up to the World Cup. He missed obviously the World Cup period, and then missed into January. He came back and scored against Fulham. And Eddie Howe's been slowly building him into the team. And you're right, you're absolutely right. Callum Wilson has been starting off the back of that. And he's actually been playing bench roles, coming on here and there. But it looks like he's ready now. It looks like he's ready. It's taken him a bit of time. Obviously, it was a big injury. It was a thigh. I think it was a thigh tear. And he kind of had a relapse as well just before the World Cup. So he was looking like he was going to come back in and then had a relapse. So it's been 4 months. It's a long time. So we needed to build it up. He's back now. And I do genuinely believe, and I've said this on my channel as well, that once Isak gets into the team, he'll stay. And I think he'll start on Friday. And I think providing he's fit, he will continue to play and be our main striker for the rest of the season. And I'm really, all the fans are really excited to see what they can, what we're going to see from him, because he offers more than Callum Wilson. He can stretch defenders with his pace. He's so quick in and behind. I don't know what your centre backs are like pace wise, but he is very, very quick in and behind. And he left Wolves' defence for dead time and time again. He's very, very good at pressing the ball, but his ability to finish from whether it's inside the 6-yard box or outside the box is extremely good. And we haven't seen that in full effect yet, but he did it regularly at Sociedad, and I'm just looking forward to seeing it at Newcastle.
I think it's really exciting to have a player like that on your team. And at Sociedad, I did actually watch some of the games when he played there, kind of when he was starting to rise up a little bit, because he was at Dortmund for a little bit as well. I think it was, wasn't it? Was it Dortmund? I think he might have been at.
Yeah, he started at Dortmund in their reserve team, came through.
Yeah. Because he really hit the mark at Sociedad. Obviously, a good move and a good bit of recruitment actually by Newcastle. I think they've had some really brilliant signings. And this is a really good question actually in regard to the kind of wider spec, the Premier League as a whole. And obviously Newcastle very competitive this year. But overall, do you think this Premier League season is the most competitive it's been for years? Because you think there's so many teams in contention for top 4, top 6 kind of space. You know, Brighton and who knows, Brentford could make that push for the top 6, 7. And then you've got potentially 8 teams that could go down, you know, into that bottom 3. So do you think that Sebastian is right in asking this question?
I agree. I agree with Sebastian. I think it has been the most competitive. You've still got the likes of, like you said, you've still got Brighton, Brentford, Fulham that could still potentially get Europa League football or even more. Brighton is still, in my opinion, firmly in the race for Champions League. And I think the last time I looked, they were winning tonight. So it's going to pull them even closer. And like you said, it's pretty much anyone from that bottom half of the table could literally get relegated. So, yeah, it's the most competitive. And this is what we want the Premier League to be. This is why I think so many pundits and media personalities and fans, more importantly, have really enjoyed this season, because it has been competitive. And when you're seeing Brentford, Brighton, Newcastle, Fulham, challenging that traditional top 6 and really pushing them to the limit, you've seen Chelsea in 10th, 9th place in the league, having spent crazy amounts of money. Like, it just shows the competitiveness, and this is why it's considered the best league in the world, because you want that competitiveness. This is what it's all about. It's not just about spending money. It's about, putting a team out that's going to be competitive on the day.
And also being confident as well. Something that Forest struggled with a lot earlier in the season was confidence. And actually something Brennan in particular, Brennan Johnson, struggled with was confidence. He always had the ability, but it was always that confidence. And there was a lot of things that he was probably thinking about, obviously the World Cup being one of them. But he's really come out of his shell, and he's been our best player and probably one of the best in the new year from any club, really. Paul, good evening, my friend. I hope you're doing well. I think most Forest fans are nervous, but at the same time, home form and maybe change of fortunes would be pretty nice on Friday. It won't be easy, though, as we say. But a good question coming in from Mark now as well. Mark Wowell. I've probably said that terribly wrong. Sorry about that, Mark. Pete, does the lack of goals in Newcastle's last few away games worry you at all?
Yeah, the goals in general in the last 5, 6, 7 games have been a concern because we just haven't really been scoring goals. But going back to the point that I mentioned before, the performances have been there to a point. We've had good possession. We've created a number of different chances, some golden chances. I mean, at the Etihad the week previous, we lost 2-0, but we had 4 or 5 great chances. I'm not talking half chances. I'm talking very, very good chances in front of goal. Callum Wilson missed a sitter. Joe Linton missed a sitter. We had other opportunities in the game, and it could have been very different. But what I saw from us on Sunday, obviously at St. James's Park, was that team that was able to be clinical and put those chances away. Now, it goes back to your point, Mark. We're going to then do it away from home. Now, the last time we really looked the part away from home was, funny enough, on Boxing Day against Leicester at the Walk. I say the Walkers, it's the King Power now. Used to be the old Walkers. And I was there, and it was outstanding to see. We were clinical. We were dynamic in our performance. We blew them away. And I'm also, there's a part of me that's feeling like, we need to be that way again. If we're going to kick on and have a really good back end of the season, we need to be, or we need to perform like that. So that's up to Eddie Howe and the boys to make sure that's happening. So it has been a little bit of a concern, but I have to say Sunday's given me a little bit more confidence that it's coming back.
Well, given that then, kind of the closing, 5 or 10 minutes of the show, could you maybe talk a little bit about what you would predict to be a lineup of the Newcastle squad for that game? But just before I ask you that, we've got the final scores in. Brighton have beaten Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace haven't won since the new year started, and Southampton lose 2-0 to Brentford. So more competitive now more than ever. But back to lineups for Newcastle. What kind of team do you anticipate starting on Friday?
I'll be honest with you. I don't see too many changes in the lineup. So I'll run through the lineup that I think potentially could start, and there may be 1 or 2 differences in this. Is that Pope will start in goal. The back 4 will be exactly the same. So I expect Byrne to be left back, Botman and Shaw the centre backs, and Trippier right back. The midfield, we don't really have a choice because we're missing Joe Linton. He's serving his second game suspension, second of the 2. He'll be back after the international break. So big miss for us because he's probably one of the first names on the team sheet. So he is a big miss for us. So we haven't got very many choices. So it'll be Bruno Guimaraes in probably the number 6 position, and then Sean Longstaff and Joe Willock. Joe Willock was outstanding, by the way, against Wolves. He was my man of the match. He was so good. So those 2 in that sort of number 8 position as a midfield 3, with Bruno just behind, and then the front 3. You have to start Isak. He scored. He was outstanding. Alan Saint-Maximin will play. He's got a great relationship with Alexander Isak. He put Isak through like 3 or 4 times in the game against Wolves and was unlucky not to get an assist off the back of that. And then it's the question mark, really, for me. The only real position where I think will change is on that right-hand side of the forward 3. Now, we started with Murphy, and Murphy was very good. He was direct. He ran his full back. He whipped balls into the box. He did that from the get-go, and he was, he's deceptively very, very quick. Got a good delivery on him and played very well. But Miguel Almiron came on and was the match winner because he came on and produced that little bit of quality. He's our top scorer of the season with 11 goals. And so I don't know whether it's going to be a case of those 2 switch and Almiron starts, or whether he keeps tact with the team that started the game. That's the only thing that I'm thinking that could potentially be changed. And I can't really hang my hat on one of whether they're going to start with Murphy or Miggy. I don't know. But the rest of the team will be as I've just said.
Well, it's a strong side. It's always a strong side. I think there's only a couple of kind of questions I want to ask you about players. Obviously, Joelinton, didn't he move positions, because he wasn't always a natural midfielder, was he, when he started at Newcastle?
No, he was signed as a number 9.
Hmm.
See, this is the crazy thing about it is when we signed him from Hoffenheim, he was signed. We signed him as a number 9, but actually he played as a left of the front three, so he left-sided forward, and so he had to adjust or try to adjust to play in a striker's role. We gave him the number 9, which is iconic at Newcastle, and he really struggled. And it was only when Eddie Howe came in, he looked at his abilities and looked at him playing on the left. And the reason he transferred into a midfielder is because against Norwich last season, we had a man sent off really early on. So he had to revert as a centre midfielder and was outstanding in that game. He was so good, best player on the pitch easily. And then he just transferred into a central midfielder, and that's where he's been ever since. Now, this season, he's kind of flip-flopped from one of the central midfielders to out on the wide left when Anderson Maximin was injured. And he's kind of flip-flopped, and he's been great in either position, scored goals, created moments in either position. So, you know, he's got that ability to be very versatile, but obviously, of course, he's not available on Friday.
So it's a big miss for you guys then, I would say.
Massive.
And obviously, Forest are going to try and play Jonjo Shelvey, I would have thought, which is, you know, obviously he has a lot of respect for Newcastle. He went to go and watch the final, and he'd obviously travelled back to Newcastle actually the day after he signed for Forest. I think actually on the night he signed for Forest to go and watch Newcastle. So you know, a lot of respect for a club that he's spent. It must be probably 7 or 8 years at. So that's why I like Jonjo Shelvey. He's obviously a very passionate player, sometimes a bit too passionate, but
how's it done for you? Sorry, Jay. How's it done for you since he's come in? Because he's had a few games now. I'm not sure if Man City game was his first game that he played for you guys.
It might have been. Yeah, I think it might have been, because I think Jonjo's one of those players, or it might have been Fulham. Actually, I think it might have been Fulham. I think he appeared, briefly at Fulham. But he was, you know, he's okay. I think he's going to take time to adjust to how we play, because obviously I don't know exactly how Newcastle play, but there's a lot of kind of long balls in Shelvey's game, which is great. But when you're not really in transition as quick as he wants it to be, it doesn't really work out as well. So, but, you know, I don't think that it's working out incredibly, but it's not going badly at the same time. We've had a couple of injuries as well and a few issues there. So, you know, he's kind of one of those people you need to put in the midfield at the moment. But I'm sure he'll get into it very soon and he'll get used to our game pretty quickly as well. But obviously, he's had his own fitness problems that he's only just come back from. So, you know, it's going to take time for him. And then obviously Chris Wood isn't going to feature at all because of injury and also because he's still on loan. I mean, how on earth you've, you know, made us pay that amount of money, I'll never know. But yeah, you keep laughing. And I've got all the respect for Chris Wood, by the way. It is an incredible amount of money.
Yeah, honestly, I think every Newcastle fan will be shocked, like how you guys have agreed to pay overall, including the loan fee, the best part of 19 million. Like we paid 25 out of his. We bought him out of his buyout clause for Burnley to get him because we needed a striker. We were desperate. Callum Wilson was out for 4 months with a calf injury. We needed a striker. At that point, no one wanted to sell us any striker in the Premier League or even in Europe because there was that thing that we've got all the money in the world to spend. We got Wood in. He did a job for us. Didn't score many goals, but he worked his socks off for us, and he was brilliant in transition and played a role. I feel bad because when you guys signed him, I kind of came onto this channel with Ben, and I was talking about him, and I thought he would do really well for you because I thought with you guys being as direct as you guys have shown in the season, that I thought that would work perfectly for him because we didn't play to his strengths. We didn't whip balls into the box. We didn't get we didn't use him as the focal point. He was just the presser for us. But I thought you guys would maybe rally around him and get the best out of him. But it doesn't seem to have been the case. I know we scored against Man City, but it doesn't seem to have been the case, and he seems to have really struggled. But I might be wrong in that. I don't know.
No. I think you're right, and I think it's so difficult because, you know, obviously there's been a lot of times where he hasn't had the service. He's had to play a bit deeper than he'd like to. And he's not a particularly quick player. So when you're seeing him run past halfway line, you're thinking, yeah, he's not going to get very far here. You know, we may as well just give the ball back and start again. But, you know, it's a really tough one. He came in with a lot of pressure, and I don't think that the deal was particularly a good one to have negotiated. And I don't want that to sound like I'm having a go, because this isn't his fault at all. He's just moved to a club. He's wanted to try something new. It's something that happens in everybody's job. You move to a new job, but except this one, you know, there's a transfer fee involved. And I think that anybody paying £15 million is, and after only 3 games worth of football, to have actually been able to trigger that, I just think it's a terrible negotiation, no matter who the player is, especially for a 31-year-old who's only going to sign for a year after that. But I don't want to get into a rant about it, because I want him to do well, because he's in a Forest shirt. And at the end of the day, as long as he's in a Forest shirt, then you can only get behind him. So,
Jay, if he keeps you in the league, are you going to complain?
Best investment you'll ever make if he keeps you in the league.
There you go.
Even if it's 1 goal at Crystal Palace on the last day that keeps us there, it's the best investment you've ever made. You know what I mean? So, but that's just how it is. It's going to be a really tough game. And to be honest, this is a good question. Confident? I'm not going to say confident, but do I believe? Yes. Is it going to be difficult? Incredibly. Is it impossible? No, as you guys proved last season.
I do believe, and this is not me being harsh with you guys, if you're going to stay in the league, you're going to need to pick up points away from home.
Oh, definitely.
Your home form, like you just said, you've not been beaten there since September. Your home form is the reason why you're in the race to stay in the league. But you need to start picking up points from home. I watched the Tottenham game, Forest away at Tottenham. And for me, it wasn't great watching. It really wasn't. And that's from a person that wanted Forest to win, because we needed you to take points off Spurs. I don't particularly think Spurs were great, but you guys kind of gifted them the game. And from speaking to Forest fans and hearing Forest fans' opinions, obviously on the build-up to this game on Friday, it seems like that has been a constant theme away from home. So if you're going to stay in the league, the performances need to be better. You need to pick up more points.
Definitely. I think anybody would be naive to say that that's not true, because it is. I think the thing that we lacked at Spurs, and you're going to have to improve on with this Newcastle game, is the midfield. And I love Dore's comment there. You're on the wine now, see?
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Dore knows more than anyone. Whenever I'm on a pod, I was like a little bit of brandy, just to enjoy whilst I'm on there. So
no, you've got to.
You got. Hey, if we take the time to come and talk about our clubs, you got to enjoy it. But no, it's not got nothing to do with rich money. Don't start that, Ben. Don't start that. It's not about that. I've been doing this since before we had the takeover. And anyone in the Newcastle chat in tonight will testify to that.
Well, it's been a turbulent few years for both of our clubs, up and down. Hopefully, we're not going to go down, and that's the fingers crossed in that regard. But it's been brilliant talking. I think we've covered quite a lot, and this definitely won't be the last time we speak. And hopefully, it'll be for Premier League reasons next season, which would be very nice. This will be our last game against Newcastle this season at home. This Friday, 8 o'clock at the City Ground. You don't want to miss it. In fact, I am going to miss it because I won't be there, unfortunately, for the one game that I really want to go to the most. But
I'll be
there. Big game coming up. You'll be there. See, even you'll be there now. Oh, don't make me jealous.
I'm in the away end with all the mad, crazy Geordies on Friday night. So, yeah, looking forward to it.
Well, don't be too crazy, remember, because we've got to clean that up. So just don't, don't be too crazy.
What I mean by crazy is we'll just be singing for 90 minutes and we'll just be kind of shouting on the team. I don't think we're like that. But yeah, Ben's just said, Ben, drop me a message. I'll drop you my number. We'll meet up before the game and have a chat. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Well, I'm gutted I can't meet you myself, but I hope it all goes well on Friday. Wishing you guys all the best. Next season. We'll do it next season. Yes. I'm looking forward to going up to St James's again. Good stadium, good atmosphere. And this is a massive, massive game coming up this Friday. May the best team win. Eddie Howe versus Steve Cooper. And it's Nottingham Forest versus Newcastle United this Friday. And that was your preview here on DoreOnTour with me, Jay, and Pete there from Loaded Mag and UFC. thank you so much for taking the time to join us both. Take care, good night, and come on, you Reds.